You are listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern vitality. If you are seeking to reconnect with your innate vibrancy, you're in the right place. I'm Emily Davis, a seasoned holistic esthetician and herbalist. Join me as we unlock the secrets of ancient skincare practices, explore the beauty of seasonal and nature-based living, herbalism, and true holistic well-being for you and the broader ecosystem. Please remember that the information I share in this podcast is based on my personal and professional experiences and is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It is not individualized skincare advice, nor is it medical advice. I encourage you to take charge of your own health decisions and listen to your body, seeking out the resources and professionals that best support your wellness journey. Hey there, and welcome back in. I have an epic episode for you today. I invited my friend Margaret James on the podcast, and I just love this woman. She is amazing. Margaret James is an Ayurvedic health counselor helping women establish simple habits that support hormone health, womb wellness, and fertility so they can heal their menstrual cycle imbalances while feeling more empowered by and at home in their wise bodies. She loves to garden, read romantasy books, find the magical in the mundane, and spend time with Mother Nature. I'm such a fangirl. I said that at the top of the episode. I have taken one workshop with Margaret. I am a subscriber to her Substack, and I've gotten to know her on more of a personal level recently as she has worked with me as a client of mine, and I just can't tell you how fantastic she is. She's so wise. I respect what she's doing in this world so freaking much. And she's just an all-around wonderful human. So I hope that you enjoy this one, and I will see you next week. So hello, Margaret. I'm so happy to have you here. As I said before, I'm just such a fangirl of yours. And I think I've told you before that your content makes me want to binge it like as much as I binge Netflix. And I just think you're doing such a great job. I recently took your Hot Girl Summer workshop, and I felt like that. Like I kept saving it for a special night, and I was like, oh, this is going to be so fun. I'm going to get cozy and sit down and watch it. And I just love everything you're doing and the way that you present it. So I'm very excited for this conversation. I want all of the people to know about you. So with that, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and just give some of your background and how you got to be where you are today.
Well, thank you. And before I go into that, I just want to say that I am also obsessed with all of your work. So the obsession is mutual.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation too. So I'm Margaret James, and I'm an Ayurveda health counselor, and I'm also a perinatal health consultant. So I support women from preconception all the way through postpartum. And within that, also supporting women in balancing hormones and menstrual health. And so really the bigger theme of my work is womb health, and really helping people be more connected to the center of power and center of embodiment. And we do that through really simple things of lifestyle and food and self-care practices, and reconnecting with nature is really what it is. Like it's really fairly simple, simple but not easy. And that's kind of what Ayurveda is about. Ayurveda translates as the science of life. It's about longevity and first and foremost about prevention. And so understand that we are nature, and believing otherwise is actually one of the first causes of dis-ease or disease, that separation with nature. So the more that we connect with nature, the more we actually remember our inherent health and wellness.
I love that. Why do you think that, I guess, like, what drew you specifically? And maybe that was really the answer, but I feel that there's, we've got traditional TCM, we have Western herbalism, we have Ayurveda, we have all of these different ancient practices, and they all, I think really come down to that same thing, that we are nature. What specifically about Ayurveda drew you into it?
I first learned, well, I was exposed to Ayurveda when I was working at Whole Foods in college. And so that was the first time I heard the word, but I wasn't really like, I didn't delve into it until I was in my yoga teacher training. So for me, it came from the same lineage as yoga. So like I already had this background in yoga. And so for me, it just made sense because they are sister sciences with one another. Some say that Ayurveda is actually the mother science, that from Ayurveda came yoga. And so for me, it was just like the cohesiveness between the different philosophies and lineages.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And do you still teach yoga at all? Do you mainly just use it as your own practice?
I haven't taught in a studio in, I don't know, like 5 years now. But I
Okay.
do have restorative yoga that I include in like my retreats and different online programming. And that's really where my yoga took me, was like to restorative yoga specifically.
Yeah.
I haven't taught power yoga probably in like 7 years. So,
Oh,
um, and I practice on my own, but the philosophy is really what I'm more interested in rather than like the poses. I think
sure.
those are important, but it's a very small piece of the whole thing.
Sure. And I imagine, as yoga, maybe Ayurveda is the mother science of yoga, the yogic philosophy, and then also what draws me to Ayurveda is all of the different like daily practices and daily rituals for optimal well-being. And what are some of those daily rituals that you think are really important, that you incorporate, that you recommend to your clients to incorporate? Is yoga part of that, or at least the yoga poses part of that?
Yeah, this is also what I love about Ayurveda, is like the daily ritual and just remembering that there is sacred in everything, and that everything can be a spiritual practice. That it doesn't have to be like a sit down, formal, like close your eyes meditation in order to access spirit. Spirit is within us and is all around us, and so the daily practices is a way for us to remember that and to call it in more often. So for me, one of the most important practices is to wake up with the sun. So one, it helps with circadian health. It helps me also honor the transition from death to wake, from nighttime to daytime. And what is said is that the first thing that you do in the morning is a declaration of what's most important to you, and like what you are proclaiming is like, this is what matters to me, and this is what I want more of in my life. And so the things that you do first thing in the morning really set the tone for the whole day. So for me, it's been reading my fairy smut lately. That's what
In
matters
the
to me.
morning?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, good
Yeah.
job. I cannot read in the morning. It makes me want to go back to bed.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, what it makes me do is just like want to escape into that world. So it's not always necessarily the best practice, but it is a moment where it's like, I get to do this thing that really brings me joy. And there's a lot of pleasure with it for me. And also, I think it's really important for us to have hobbies that we don't have to commodify. And there's a lot of things that I do that have like become part of my business. And like reading is not something that I am commodifying in any way. So it's just something I get to do for fun.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so the morning practice of like waking up with the sun really impacts the entire whole rest of the day and how our body operates, from balancing hormones to digestion to mood to all kinds of things. And so that's one of the first practices that I work on with clients, of just like starting to shift wake up time a little bit earlier, because a lot of people are also coming to me because they're like, I'm super stressed. I don't feel like I have any time for myself. And so when we start looking at daily rhythm, it's like when they wake up in the morning, they already feel behind. And they're like rushing through their day. And so then that carries through the whole rest of the day. So again, first thing in the morning, even if you're shifting your wake up time back by like 15 minutes, like 15 minutes to just sit outside and listen to the birds is a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it's also a really great way to like imprint this belief that we are worth the time, that I am worth the time for myself. I'm worth this energy. I'm worth this moment to just be in peace. And morning time also relates to early childhood. So if any of that stuff, happened early in childhood of not feeling like you were worthy, that you were worth the time, that no one gave you the time, that the morning time can be a way to heal some of those wounds.
Yeah, I love that. And I do think that reading for pleasure is such a practice of I'm worth the time. Like it doesn't have to be productive. I
Yeah,
had a whole day of reading yesterday
love it.
and I kept feeling like you need to stop, you need to go do something productive. And I was like, no, I have to rest. And it's like so juicy and luscious to just sit and read something for pleasure. And I
Yeah.
think that that's really made a huge comeback lately with book talk. And I
Mm-hmm.
really love that. I'm so excited that people are finding that time for pleasure. What are you reading right now?
Right now, it is the Flesh and Fire series
Okay.
by Jennifer Armentrout. So
Okay.
she wrote From Blood and Ash, and this is like the prequel series to that one.
Okay.
I'm on book
Should
one
we
of it.
read From Blood and Ash first or should
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. It'll give some context, and it's also some of the characters overlap. And so part of it's like when you read the first series, it kind of sets the tone for the prequel and knowing kind of what's going to happen. So you're not like taken totally, um,
Okay.
yeah, by surprise in some of the
Okay.
stories. So, anyways, I like it that way.
Okay. I've had that one on my list for a while. I have such a long TBR.
Oh my god, I do too. Book talk does not help. I just go in. I'm like, oh, another book, save, another book, save. Oh, a whole list of books, saving each one of them. Yeah,
It's problematic. It's
yeah.
true. So I love reading for pleasure, but do you have any other resources for like specifically if somebody is attracted to this Ayurvedic lifestyle and way of living? Do you have any resources you recommend, whether it be a book or a podcast or YouTube channel or whatever that somebody could check in to dive deeper?
Yeah, so my teacher, Katie Silcox, she wrote a book called Healthy, Happy, Sexy. And she really makes Ayurveda digestible. And so when I did my training with her, that was kind of why I did it with her. It was an online course or training. And so I also really appreciate her approach to it because Ayurveda can be incredibly rules based and very masculine and like you do this and you do this and you do this. It's very rigid and dogmatic. And she brings in a lot more feminine essence to it and a lot more like nervous system support. So yeah, her book is a really great place to start if you're interested in Ayurveda. And if you've ever looked into Ayurveda before and you're like, this is a lot and I don't really know what's going on here, she makes it really approachable.
Oh, I love that. That's definitely something for me that has felt difficult is all of the dogma that I have come across in Ayurveda and just like, you can't eat this, you have to eat this, or your digestion's ruined, or whatever it may be. And I find that in TCM as well sometimes. And so I love that we can integrate with anything, we can take what works well and then we can integrate our own essence into it to find how it can work better. And I think
Yeah.
that's so important to remember. So you have a skincare line, which I love as an herbalist esthetician, as a holistic esthetician. I'm drawn towards herbalist created skincare. And I recently got your naked body oil and I've been using it every day. I love it so much. Tell me about what Because I saw on your Instagram that this is your 3-year anniversary of your
It
skincare
is.
line.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
very
you.
cool. What brought you to creating a skincare line and how did you decide to do that?
So I worked at Whole Foods in college, in the body care department, and so I learned about like clean skincare then. But I was also a broke college kid, and I couldn't afford any of it, and so I just started making my own. And so it's been 13 years of me just making my own skincare. And in I guess 2021, I had been sharing some stuff on Instagram, and people were like, "You should like turn this into a business. I would totally buy this stuff." And so it was like, "Well, okay." And it kind of fed into it's like the outside in approach to what I do with women as far as inside out. Because a lot of hormone health does require having clean skincare. It can be really hard to find. Maybe not so much hard to find, but it's not always accessible, and it can be really, really expensive. And so, yeah, they like these two parts of my business kind of like complement one another. Sometimes the skincare is the way in for some people to start working with hormone health. And then other times it's like, where are you doing hormone health? And here are some other products you could use if you're looking for something. Yeah, so it just kind of came out naturally, very organically, if you will.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been a very, very interesting ride. Product-based business is entirely different than than coaching or online services. So learned a lot in the 3 years.
Yeah, I bet that's definitely something someday I am interested in doing. But it's a lot and it's a
Yeah.
lot more than just like, oh, I'm going to put some oil in a bottle. Like there's so much logistics and I would love to have you back sometime to talk about that. But today I'd love to talk about like what are some of your favorite herbs topically that you love to incorporate in your skincare line, especially for people who maybe do have hormonal issues with their skin.
Yeah. So one of my favorites, well, there's two. They kind of tie for one another and they go really great together, is Mangista. And so Mangista is an Ayurvedic herb and it's great for all pitta conditions. So pitta is the element of fire. There's a little bit of water with it. And it's directly related to the blood, the liver, and both of those have a great impact on skin health. And so usually when someone is having skin issues, especially if it's like red inflamed, like acne stuff, it's usually a pitta imbalance. And so Mangista is really great at helping to clear out that excess pitta. And then the other one is Amalaki. And Amalaki is also very similar. It has it can help balance all the doshas really. It does have a little bit more of an affinity for pitta dosha, but both of those can help. They help the lymph. They really help improve like brightness, evening out skin tone. Those are like my two favorites for topical use. And then if someone is dealing with like a lot of dryness, marshmallow, of course, is like one of my favorites. And and then both or all three of those, you could mix together with some honey and do a little mask like that.
Oh, I love that. That's
Yeah.
so interesting. Um, what about internal? Well, I have two questions here, but I'll start with what about internally? Like, what are some of your favorite herbs for people who are struggling with that hot, inflamed, maybe like hormonal acne, maybe it's cystic and things like that?
I would use the Mangista and Amalaki internally too.
Okay.
And so, I fully believe on like what you put on the skin is something that you should be able to take internally. So like the cleansers I have, like you can literally, if you wanted to, like eat a spoonful of it. And
Ooh,
help you like purify from the inside. I don't like using that term purify, but that's
yeah,
sometimes how the way that Ayurveda phrases it.
yeah.
Um, So yeah, both of those because they are phenomenal for lip support, for cleansing excess heat in the blood. They can also help with regular elimination, especially amalaki. And so sometimes when people have more like cystic acne, they tend to have looser stools. And so it's also a reflection of like life moving too quickly through you that you're not digesting life. And so amalaki can help go in and slow some things down. But it's also like a brightening herb. So people often say like when they take amalaki, they just feel really bright from the inside out. And then the mangista is really great for, well, again, lip support. Sometimes when people do have cystic acne, they tend to have really pungent BO. And mangista is really great at helping clear out those toxins that are causing the super pungent BO.
Ooh, that's so interesting. Ayurveda is not my zone of genius, and I've never heard of those two herbs.
Mm.
Where do you recommend if somebody wanted to check them out and maybe incorporate them into their lifestyle, where would they purchase them?
Yeah, there's an Ayurvedic website called Banyan Botanicals, Banyan, and you can get tablets or powder. In Ayurveda, it's suggested to use the powder because the taste, first and foremost, that's the first part of digestion, and so that can actually, support from the very get-go. Versus like tablets, if you take them, it takes a little bit longer for it to kick in. But sometimes the convenience of tablets means that you'll actually be more consistent with it, and that matters more. So
Sure.
either
And
one.
with this powder, would you put it in water? Do you mix it with honey?
That's a really great question. So there's a lot of ways that we can take it. Ayurveda really believes that the carrier is very important. So yeah, it could be water. So you could steep it in hot water at night, and then either mix it. Some people will strain it with like a super fine mesh strainer. Honey would also be really good if you feel like you have more stagnation or congestion going on, because honey's like a scraping quality, so it helps pull out some of that stuff. Aloe is also really, really good. So aloe is great for anyone who has excess pitta, so a lot of like fire stuff going on. It's also really great during summer, which is pitta season. It helps cool us off. It is not for people who are either actively trying to conceive or who are pregnant or who have short period or short cycles. Would not recommend it for them though. And I would do honey or water.
Sure. Okay. That's very interesting. I'm in a herbalism phytochemistry course right now, and we've been currently discussing like how our digestive apparatus is such a powerful extractor. And I think in my early years of herbalism, I thought like, oh, it has to be alcohol, it has to be oil. And I'm really into like doing powders, especially with honey, and doing these types of things just to experiment, because it's not a way that I've traditionally experienced herbs outside of taking a capsule. So, and I love that
Yeah.
idea of the taste component as well, because that's so important. Our mouth is such an important part of our digestive GI tract that I think sometimes gets lost. We only think about our intestines with the GI tract. So that's very interesting. I will put that company in the show notes. And then I also recently, after your workshop, purchased the nose oil
Mm-hmm.
from another company that you had recommended. Can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about the nose oil and why? I had never heard of it before, and I'm really excited to open that gland in the top of my head.
Yeah. So this is a really great thing to go back to like morning routine and like what are some of the things that we can do first thing in the morning. So I'll talk about nose oil, and then I want to talk about the tongue scraping as we're talking about like taste, because those
Yeah.
are two like really important things. So the nose oil, um, there's different companies. I like the one that I recommend, which is from Pavani, Paavani, because there's an herb in that called Shankpushpi, which is like really great for like calming the mind and just like having a very stable outlook on life. So anyways, what you'll do is you just take this little dropper, it kind of looks like a tincture bottle, and you just lay back and you just drop a couple drops into the nose. And ideally, if you can, like you would be hanging your head off the edge of a bed. And so once you drop those oils in, or the drops of the oil, you like snuff it really hard, like, because you want to get like back in the sinuses.
Yeah.
And so it does a lot of things. It helps protect the sinuses because it's actually coating the sinuses. And often how pathogens are getting in is from dryness, like cracks in the mucous membranes. And so when we have oil, it's helping to coat it. It really like attaches to those things, and then we sneeze it out, blow it out, whatever it is. So it's one just for sinus health in general. Then the other part is the lymph. So they found that we have this huge lymph vessel on the top of our head, which is different than like a lymph node. And so with Nasya or nose oil is that the herbs that are used actually help to go in and like cleanse that out, which means that we have, the brain fog can lift. We have better memory. We have better focus. And so people often use it before meditation to have that like clear sense of perspective and just clarity in general. So it's a really easy practice. And it's one that I really can't live without, especially during fall and winter when it's so dry.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure it's helpful for cold and flu season for
Mm-hmm.
protecting that nasal cavity. What is the herb called again?
Shank Pushpi.
Shock.
So ShankPusphi. Shank Pushpi.
Interesting. Okay. I am really excited to do a little bit more research on this lymph vessel because
Mm-hmm.
I did not know about it, even though I have taken numerous manual lymphatic drainage courses. Is this I was also thinking during your workshop that maybe doing like rebounding would help with that lymph vessel as well, just like getting that movement and that vibration
Oh
happening.
yeah, I mean any kind of
Okay.
lymph, support will help in general. We just
Okay.
usually don't do much on the top of the head. Like
Yeah.
sure rebounding because you're still like the whole body is moving, but like
Yeah.
actually to do scalp massage, which is like another big practice in Ayurveda, is to like actually go in and like move all of this stuff around up here.
Mm,
Um, and so Nasya can also be really great for those who maybe tend to have one like a really flighty mind and just like racing thoughts, a lot of anxiety, a lot of what ifs, because oil is grounding by
yeah.
by nature. Um, but then it can also help those who have like really sharp critical thoughts towards himself or towards others. That again, the herbs can come in and kind of just like soften that experience. Um,
Mhm.
so it's really great practice.
That's really cool. I can't wait for it to get here because I find myself with both of those types of thoughts. So I'm excited to start the Nausea daily. Any people who it's not a good idea for?
Yes, if you are on your period, you don't want to
Okay.
because we want energy to be moving downward while you're bleeding. And same also when you're pregnant, is that, we want that energy to be in the pelvis and growing outward. And so when we do Nasya, it's kind of drawing the energy up and out. So yeah, it's not for if you're pregnant or on your period.
Okay.
Um, Sometimes you'll see Nasya recommended along with neti pot, that you would do neti pot and then Nasya afterwards. Um, the way that I've been taught is that if you do that, you want about an hour between neti pot and the Nasya oil, so there's no water still in the sinuses because you don't want the oil to go in and trap the water, and then it leads to a sinus infection.
Sure. Are you and then we can get to the tongue scraping. Are you a proponent of using the neti pot on a
I
regular
am.
basis?
I am definitely in springtime when we, a lot of allergies, a lot more congestion tends to be happening. It's not something that I do, every day by any means. It just feels like too intense to be doing it that often. And I find that Nasya really does more of what I feel like I need or want.
Okay.
And neti pot is also, I mean, it's a great preventative tool. That's why it's so great in springtime. But if you already have a sinus infection, it's actually not great to do a neti pot. Sometimes you'll see it recommended then, but it actually can push the infection like deeper into the sinuses and take longer to get over it. And this is where Ayurveda is like prevention first and foremost. Like if you're doing neti pot pretty regularly, especially if you do have chronic sinus infections, then it can reduce the occurrence. But once you have it, then we want to look at other options.
Okay, that's good to know. I have been tongue scraping and oil pulling for since Pinterest, I think, was invented. Tell me about that and how why you like it so much and all of the beautiful. I can't think of a better word than benefits.
Yeah, it's I can't go a day without tongue scraping. So when you wake up in the morning, you have this little tool and you scrape your tongue. It's different than taking a toothbrush and just like running the toothbrush back and forth. So all of the organs of the body are mapped onto the tongue. And so when you wake up first thing in the morning and you look at your tongue, and you may notice like I have a really thick white coating, or maybe it looks a little yellow today. So one, the practice of like looking at your tongue is a way for you to start to learn the language of your body. So when you tongue scrape, you're taking this little tool and you're going from the back of the tongue and scraping it forward, and it's going to gather a bunch of stuff. And it's like, that was on my tongue. But what it's doing is like overnight, your organs are doing like deep cleansing process. Like there's a lot of cleansing and detoxing going on. And so sometimes that comes onto the tongue. And so when we scrape it off first thing in the morning, we're getting rid of those toxins. We're not, taking them back in when we have breakfast, which then overall improves oral microbiome health, because you're getting that stuff out. But it can also improve sense of taste. And so back to this conversation of like the taste piece being really important. If you have a really thick coating, then it's blocking those taste buds and you can't actually taste the food that you're eating, which then means that you may be eating food that your body doesn't really want, or it's not like very supportive. So yeah, there's that piece. But for me, the bigger piece is like connecting with my body and starting to be curious. Like, what does it mean if I have, a crack down the center of my tongue, or if I have scalloping around the edges that looks like teeth marks? We get so much information from the tongue. And so every person I work with during our sessions, like, can I see your tongue? And they're like, what? Why? So yeah, it's something that for people to really start to take their health into their own hands and recognize, like, one, where is the different film popping up. The very back of the tongue is related to the colon. A lot of people have a lot of film at the back of the tongue because there's a buildup in the colon. And so that's can really have an impact across the whole body if we're not pooping, like good poops. I call it poophoria, the euphoria after a good poop.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. What do the scallops on the side of the tongue mean?
Malabsorption. So you're not absorbing things, which
Okay.
usually will go along with like white flecks on the nails or ridges on the nails will often be coincide with that.
Okay. Where can people learn more about tongue mapping in an Ayurvedic lens?
You can just Google it, honestly, like Ayurveda tongue mapping. Bain and Botanicals should have it. One of the most well-known Ayurvedic doctors and teachers, Dr. Vasant Lad, he has graphics online. Yeah, you can see a lot of it just through Google, to be honest.
Okay, that's great to know. I will definitely link him as well in the show notes. As far as we talked about topical herbs for skin and we talked about the internal herbs, but what about lifestyle practices and foods, and maybe getting a little into seasonal living for people who want to support their hormone health and their skin health, which will just, I think, skin health is always like a trickle down effect of internal wellness, of course.
Yeah, so I am a firm believer that nature is providing what we most need at any given time of the year. So really, first and foremost is like, if you can attune to seasonal foods, that would be the best way to go for overall health. And people tend to think that seasonal eating is really expensive. And it's actually not. If anything, it's cheaper because all that food is in abundance. And so like when you go to the grocery store during summer and you see like melons are on sale and corn is on sale, like all these foods are in abundance. And so we can be eating this all the time for a lot cheaper. Like sometimes during the summer, it'll be like 5 ears of corn for $1 versus like in wintertime, it might be like $1 for 1 ear of corn because it's not coming from anywhere around here. Yeah. We can talk about summertime since we're doing this during summer. But summertime is when we're accumulating heat. And so people tend to be having a lot more skin irritations, be it rashes or hives or breakouts or itchiness. And so a lot of the foods that we can be eating are like melons. Melons are sweet and juicy and they're cooling. So it helps to like remove that heat. They're also really easy to digest. And so that's an important part of summer self-care is really making things as easy to digest. And that's Like if we think about summertime, like we're sweating, we're losing a lot of our digestive capacity. Like our pores are more open, our fire is leaving us. Versus in wintertime, like it kind of turns into a cave and it like forces that digestive fire like deeper and stronger inside of us, which is why in wintertime we tend to have an easier or greater capacity to be eating heavier, denser foods like meats and like fat, and bigger portions of it too. So, so one of the lifestyle practices would be like seasonal eating. And then another practice that is probably my number one practice that I'm most in love with. It's called Abhyanga, and it's self-massage with oil. And it benefits everything, like really and truly. So one, oil in Sanskrit is sneha, and sneha also translates as love. So like when you're putting oil on your body, it means that you're putting love on your body. Your hands are an extension of your heart. This is how we hug people, how we hold hands, high five, how we say no, which is an act of love too. And so when we are massaging ourselves with oil, like it's a deeply loving practice for ourselves. And so there's that piece of just like connecting with our bodies, speaking loving things to ourselves. Then the other part is like, it's a lymph support. We're massaging, making sure everything is getting moved around. Stagnant lymph, is, can lead to a lot of issues, if you will. It can be as easy, maybe not easy, but like as surface level as puffiness. But then it can also it can be skin stuff, that stuff isn't being moved around. So there's that piece. Circulation, which kind of goes hand in hand with lymph, that improves circulation. It can improve digestion. It supports nervous system health. So it's something that I often recommend for people who are feeling really depleted, or if they're feeling like really like erratic and frazzled and all over the place. Like the practice really helps to like bring everything back in and down. And you can do the whole body, so it's recommended that you do the whole body. If you can do it every day, that's really great. It's like a 20-minute practice to do the whole thing, because you also don't want to be just like rushing through it, because then you're putting that energy onto yourself. So you want to do like a slow, gentle, loving practice. And ideally you're doing it before a shower, which this always throws everyone for a loop. But when you do it before a shower and let it sit in, so maybe you can like meditate afterwards, or just kind of hang out and just do nothing for a little bit, which we don't do enough of. But then you get in the shower, and the heat of the shower presses the oil into the tissues more deeply, so it alleviates dryness if you're using it for dry skin. But it makes the herbs more effective too. So, we typically put herbs into like hot water. It opens things, makes it more effective. So the shower does the same thing. And then the other part is that it rinses off the excess, so you can get dressed right after. Because a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to be oily, like massaging myself with oil, this sounds gross. And so if you do it before, it kind of takes that out. So that's one of my favorite practices that kind of benefits all systems of the body, including skin health.
Is there a specific order in the body, like starting at your feet? Does it matter? Like, I was surprised when you just said it's like a 20-minute practice, because when I don't do it for 20 minutes. And so I am going to slow down and make this into more of a self-care practice. But is there like any specifics of that practice that you can share?
Yeah, so we want to be pulling everything towards the digestive system. So you can start head down to about belly button, and then you'll go feet up from belly button. And on the long bones, so let's talk forearm, you'll be going in long strokes with the bone. The joints, you want to go in a circle around it. And then on the stomach, once you pull everything towards the stomach, you want to be going clockwise. So if you're looking down at your stomach, you'll start on the right side of the hip, up to the right ribs, across to the left ribs, down to the left hip, and around like that, because that's the way that the digestion moves. So that's how it can support elimination too, which Ayurveda sees as different than digestion. So that can be, that can help, if you do have constipation, can kind of help get things moving.
Yeah. Okay. And do you recommend that the oil be warm? Does it matter? Is that one of those like dogmatic rules?
It feels really good when it's warm, especially like fall and winter. Like summertime, you might not want warm oil. You're like, I'm already hot, and then don't want it.
Yeah.
So check in with yourself. Like it could be a dogmatic rule, but for me, it doesn't make sense to have it warm in oil. I mean, sorry,
Yeah.
warm in summer.
Yeah. And speaking of that, do you change your oil seasonally, or do you always use your naked body oil, or what is
I
your preference?
usually, yeah, I usually just use my naked body oil because it's pretty balanced across the board for most doshas and most seasons. Like sesame
Okay.
oil is a warming oil, anyways. The safflower helps to balance that a little bit, and then there's lavender, rose, chamomile, and calendula, and so it kind of touches on all things. Um, the way that I adjust it to maybe make it more supportive for like fall and winter when it tends to be cooler is that I warm the oil. So
Okay. Okay.
because if you can get like Ayurvedic Abhyanga oils, but they have a lot of herbs in them and they are stinky.
Yeah.
And it's not. I mean, they're great, but not everyone wants to walk around smelling like neem.
Yeah, definitely. I use mustard and
Yeah,
sesame in the fall, and it is quite pungent.
yeah, works really great. But yeah, it's not necessarily something that you'd want to be doing every day. Where it's like if you have a
Right.
full self care day at home, it's great for that. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Where can people get your naked body oil if they're interested in starting an Abhyanga practice and want a very balanced oil to use?
Yeah, so my website is wildandradiantbotanicals.com. So you can order it there. And I think I have my Abhyanga guide as like the freebie option. I need to double check that. I haven't worked on that website in a little while.
That's me too, girl.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, did I? I know it was on my coaching website. I don't know if it was on my
Oh my
botanicals
gosh, I
website.
can't imagine managing two websites. I just have the one and
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
lot.
I used to run it all through my like coaching website. Like it was just the store on my website, and then was like, no, I want this to feel like separate entities. I don't want it to
Yeah.
be like enmeshed with one another.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I broke it out, and it's a very simple website for that
Nice.
reason.
I like that. Well, I'll definitely put that in the show notes as well. Your wild and radiant skincare, and then also your coaching site. Are there any other suggestions that you wanted to mention for people listening? So I have estheticians who listen who are caring for others, which means that we, as you know, there's a lot of output. And so a lot of self care is very necessary. But then
Mm-hmm.
I also have a community of skincare junkies who are just really interested in living their best life in a holistic way to support their skin. Are there any other suggestions that you have for both or either of those two groups of people?
Yes, and it's one that is like unpopular but popular. Like you'll see
Okay.
people talk about it all the time on Instagram, but doing nothing,
Yes.
literally. So rest, like an intentional rest practice. So I teach restorative yoga, and that came from my own experience of being like super type A, of like working commercial real estate. I was doing super hot yoga. I was training for triathlons, and then I was about to do a yoga teacher training, and then I broke my pinky, and like I couldn't do any of that.
Mm,
And so the only classes I could take were yin or restorative yoga. And I was like, well, this isn't doing anything. This isn't worth it. And it ended up changing my entire life.
wow.
And it is the number one thing, not number one, but it's like in the top things that I work with clients of how to actually rest. Um, and yeah, teaching them the skills because we're never taught how to rest. Teaching them the skills to move into a more restful state, so we can actually like digest our life, digest our food, and really come into a more balanced state. So then we're making decisions from a centered place rather than like a grasping, like I need to be doing something, I have to figure this out right now. And so the ripple effect of that, was really far reaching. The whole body, like we have to be resting at some
Yeah.
point. It's what having a period is like an opportunity to deeply rest and replenish and rejuvenate. And what I see in so many of the people I work with is that we're constantly blowing through our resources, be it like energetic resources, mental, emotional, financial. Like everyone's just like hoping that tomorrow is going to be the day that they have enough to like rejuvenate and replenish all of that. And so whether you're caring for someone through being an esthetician, or if you just are, skincare junkie and you just like, how do I have, the best life living holistically is resting, ironically. And that can be, I teach a 22-minute practice. It's just laying down. You can do it guided, or you can just set an alarm on your phone for 22 minutes, specifically 22 minutes, because it takes about 2 minutes to like get the wiggles out and find your comfy position. And then it's like 15-ish minutes of like the mind kind of like wandering. And then the last 5 minutes tends to be like a very deep experience of like, you're not awake, you're not asleep. It's like a backdoor to meditation, without it really being meditation. But when we access that place, there's a lot of answers and a lot of insight. It's coming from ourselves instead of always grasping outside to be like, oh, that book is going to solve it. That course is going to be the answer. That we have it from inside of us.
Okay, well, I really need to take that. You are such a gem. I love that you are continuing to offer these workshops and courses online so people can find that at your coaching website. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah. So I will tag that. And then if people want to find more online about you, where do you hang out most of the time?
Instagram.
Okay.
So my Instagram is at Hey Margaret James, and that's where, I share a lot of stuff about either stuff that I'm offering or teaching or leading, or also just like glimpses of my garden or funny memes about fairy smut.
Perfect. And also I want to give a shout out to your Substack because I'm a loyal Substack subscriber and reader. I get really excited when the new ones come out. So sign up for her Substack. It's beautiful. Follow her on Instagram. It's amazing. And her memes are, if you are into book talk and fantasy books, you've got to follow Margaret because she's got it on point. Well, thank you so much for joining. This has been so insightful. I've learned a lot. I'm really excited to start the nose oiling and to revamp Abhyanga practice. And I'm just so grateful. You're amazing. You're a gem. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with the world.
Thank you, Emily. It was so great being here with you today and being like, I sometimes Instagram and social media were like, this horrible place and I want to get off of it, but it's really led to connections like you and me. So
I agree.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful. Thank you. Take care.
Have a good one.
You've been listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality. If you liked what you heard today, consider giving me a 5-star rating. It helps other people just like you find the show. You can shop products and find all of my offerings on my website, stratumaesthetics.com, and follow me on my social channels at Stratum Aesthetics.